Qajar art refers to the art, architecture, and art forms of the Qajar dynasty of the late Persian Empire, which lasted from 1781 to 1925. The boom in artistic expression that occurred during the Qajar era was the fortunate side effect of the period of relative peace that accompanied the rule of Agha Muhammad Khan and his descendants. With his ascension, the bloody turmoil that had been the 18th century in Persia came to a close, and made it possible for the peacetime arts to again flourish. Qajar painting. Most notably, Qajar art is recognizable for its distinctive style of portraiture. Origins and influences. The roots of traditional Qajar painting can be found in the style of painting that arose during the preceding Safavid Empire. During this time, there was a great deal of European influence on Persian culture, especially in the arts of the royalty and noble classes. European art was undergoing a period of realism, and this can be seen in the depiction of objects, especially by Qajar artists. The European influence is very well evidenced in the preeminent position and prestige of oil painting. While oil paintings had been par for the course during previous periods of Persian art, it was the influence of the European masters, like Rubens and Rembrandt, the true masters of oil portraiture, that raised it to the highest level. Heavy application of paint and dark, rich, saturated colors are elements of Qajar painting that owe their influences directly to the European style. Development of painting style. While the depiction of inanimate objects and still lifes is seen to be very realistic in Qajar painting, the depiction of human beings is decidedly idealized. This is especially evident in the portrayal of Qajar royalty, where the subjects of the paintings are very formulaically placed and situated to achieve a desired effect. Royal portraiture. Most famous of the Qajar artworks are the portraits that were made of the various Persian shahs. Each ruler, and many of the sons and other relatives, commissioned official portraits of themselves either for private use or public display. The most famous of these are of course the myriad portraits which were painted of Fath Ali Shah Qajar, who, with his narrow waist, long black bifurcated beard and deep-set eyes, has come to exemplify the romantic image of the great Oriental ruler. Many of these paintings were by the artist Mahr Ali, while the portraits were executed at various points throughout the life of the Shah. They adhere to a canon in which the distinctive features of the ruler are emphasized. Portraits exist of Fath Ali Shah in a very wide assortment of situations, from the armor-clad warrior king to the flower-smelling gentleman, but all are similar in the depiction of the Shah, differing only slightly, usually due to the specific artist of the portrait. It is only appropriate that this particular Shah be so immortalized in this style, as it was under his rule as the second Qajar Shah that the style truly flourished. One reason for this were the stronger and stronger diplomatic ties that the Qajar rulers were nurturing with European powers. While Fath Ali Shah himself never visited Europe, many portraits of him were sent with envoys in the effort to convey the imperial majesty of the Persian court. With the rise of Nasir-ud-Din Shah, photography became much more important in the art of the period, and portraiture, while still used for official purposes, fell gradually out of favor. In addition, as Nasir-ud-Din Shah was the first Persian ruler to visit Europe, the official sending of portraits was left by the wayside, a relic of times gone by. Other portraiture. The depiction of non-royal persons also has a very important place in the explanation and understanding of Qajar art. While naturally not commoners, the subjects of these portraits were often minor princes, the grandsons, nephews, and great-nephews of the ruling or previously ruling shahs. These princes, with the wealth and position of the families, had very little else to do but contribute to the arts, so the patronage was certainly less than detrimental to the arts of the time. Often, portraits of this class would be commissioned as depictions of family groups, depicting the male, an idealized, nubile wife, and the perfectly formed child. Other times, they would be in the form of a royal portrait depicting solely the male commissioner, but with subtle variations making it clear that the sitter is not a royal. One way that this was accomplished was through a cartouche that was displayed next to the head of each portrait's subject, clarifying who was being depicted, and any relevant titles. For the ruling head of Persia, this cartouche is fairly regulated, while for anyone else, it may include a longer name, a lesser title, or a short genealogy. Depiction of women. One of the most unusual practices in Qajar art is the depiction of women. In such a strongly Islamic society, it seems to contradict that view that the women of Qajar Persia are depicted in much art as wearing very little in the way of modest clothing. This is strikingly at odds with the prevalent use of the chador in Persia. Calligraphy. In the Qajar era, calligraphy is and has been the definitive Persian art form. There exists a prohibition in Islam against the depiction of human beings, similar to the Jewish rule against graven images, and as such, calligraphy and its associated art forms became a very important part of Islamic expression. Upon the introduction of the Arabic script to Persia, the people therein set themselves to making it their own. The Shahanshah Nama. During the reign of Fath Ali Shah Qajar, a work of literature and art was commissioned that was intended to rival the work of Ferdowsi. This book was called the Shahanshah Nama. It is apparent to the scholar of Persian art and literature that this book is based upon the work of art known as the Shahnameh, which was written by Ferdowsi in the year 1000. The Shahnameh, in brief, chronicles the quasi-mythical founding of the Persian Empire and the heroes and villains who punctuated its inception. This Shahanshah Nama is now situated in the National Library of Vienna, Austria. Qajar textile arts. The sartorial inclinations of the Qajar period were not so very different from those of earlier period until the latter half of the era, as is evidenced by the early portraiture of Fath Ali Shah Qajar and Muhammad Shah Qajar. The traditional styles of dress in Persia were preserved, but as Western influences became more and more prevalent, the royal portraits began to depict the Shah in a more Western, military-style garb. This is not to say, however, that the traditional textile arts of Persia had fallen into disuse. While the Shah wished to appear advanced and Western to European monarchs and diplomats, it was still his duty to exude the pride and ancient glory of the Persian Empire, so court dress retained very strong elements of traditional dress. Qajar architecture. Examples of Qajar-era architecture and landscape design include Constitution House, Tabriz; Nazir al-Mulk Mosque, Shiraz; Golistan Palace Complex, Tehran. The Shams-ul-Emirate Palace, first iron building in the city; the Nayavaran Palace Complex, Tehran. The Saheb-Khuriyu Palace; the Kushkev Ahmad Shah Pavilion; Sadabad Palace Complex, Tehran; the Green Palace, Aram Garden Persian Gardens, Shiraz. Kavam House, in the Aran Garden; Abbas Mirza Mosque, Yerevan. Gallery, Qajar Art.